The system's life cycle is a process of stages which occur during the development of a new ICT system.
In this presentation, we will talk about the 6 different stages of the system's life cycle, and hopefully at the end of this, you will know a bit more on how it works.
The SLC consists of the following stages:
analysis,
Design,
development and testing,
implementation,
documentation,
evaluation.
Analysis would typically involve collecting data about the current system, finding out problems with the current system, establishing the problem that the customer needs solving, identifying inputs, processing and outputs of the current system, identifying the requirements of the new system, and producing a cost-benefit analysis. The data is obtained by 4 methods. For example, interviews. These take place face-to-face and usually involve more detailed questions than questionnaires. But interviews take far longer to complete as it is expensive to carry out as time is costly. Observations. This is where a system analysis sits and watches everybody using the current system. A disadvantage would be that the person being watched might feel uncomfortable and work in a different way to usual. Questionnaires. A good thing about this is the questions can be answered quickly. The answers also have a more honest approach as these can be answered anonymously. Looking at the current system's documentation. This involves looking at paperwork for the current system. The paperwork will contain information needed to implement the new system. This is also very time-consuming. And finally, you need to identify problems and create a requirement specification in order to solve them. Once there is a clear list of requirements for the new system, it is time to design or plan how it will look and work. Every part of the system is carefully designed and tasks include designing data entry screen, designing user interface layouts, designing printed outputs, designing screen-based outputs, designing structures to store data, and designing data validation and verification methods. What is the difference between validation and verification? Validation is where a computer system checks that data entered by the user is sensible and usable. The computer system will be programmed with a list of these checks that it can use to compare the data that the user is entering. If the user tries to enter something that does not match up with items on the validation checklist, the system will not accept the data. However, verification is a way of making sure that data being entered into the system exactly matches the source of the data. For example, the data in the system must be identical to the data on the printed forms, or there could be problems.
development and testing, the process. The obtained data is used for programming the system, testing the system, implementing the system. The system is programmed using the data that was collected earlier and the design also created earlier. Programming is a tedious process, but without it, the system cannot exist. After the system has been programmed, it is then tested. After testing the system, it is then finally implemented and is now ready to be used. Why is testing the system necessary? To check if things are working as intended, to find and fix bugs, to find imperfections and improve them. If a system is left untested, there's a high chance that it will be unstable. What is implementation? It is the process of making the system usable either on a PC, laptop, tablet, or phone. After implementing the system on a certain, sometimes more than one device, the system is pretty much finished and is now usable.
There are 2 types of documentation that should be produced when creating a new system. Those are user documentation and technical documentation. The user documentation are usually non-technical use, who just need to know how to use the system. The use documentation usually include list of minimum hardware and software required to use the system, how to install the system, how to start and stop the system, how to use the feature of the system, screenshot showing the system in typical use. The technical documentation is made to help the maintainer, who are usually technical people, who need to know exactly how the system works. The technical documentation system should include detail of the hardware and software required for the system, detail of the data structure such as data type and file name, detail of expected input such as key that open and close mind, detail of validation check, detail of how data is processed, diagram showing how data move through the system, flowchart describing how the system works. What is evaluation? Evaluation is to assess the system to see if it does what it's supposed to do, that it is working well, and that everyone is happy with it. How will the system be evaluated? First, the system will be checked against the requirement specification that has been made before, that the system has met what the employees and employer required for. After the system analysis check that the system has met all the requirements, then analysis let the employees try the new system and ask for their feedback by using questionnaire, interview, and observation. What happened next? The outcome of the evaluation will be to identify an limitation or problem with the new system.